somebody called Sangera, and that isn't even a Muslim name, that's a Sikh name.
Yes,
so what are you saying, that there are things that disturb you in the immigrant population which you think could have led to this kind of... I'm trying to understand, because you're the one who's linking... I'm asking you questions about this case, and you're bringing these things up, so there must be a link established in your mind.
Let me say that I think we need to... 13 is a very, very young age indeed to rape someone. Clearly, something in this young man's upbringing has led him to believe that women don't have rights. That he's obviously not been brought up to respect women's rights at all. I think we can agree with that, can't we? So, what I suggested was that we look into his parental upbringing. Is there an issue there with parents? I don't know. Is there an issue with other matters?
So that was the suggestion from David Davies. After the interview, we got a call from Mohammed Shafiq, who's chief executive of the Ramadan Foundation. And also we thought we'd get in touch with the think tank mentioned by Mr. Davies, because he talked about the Centre for Social Cohesion, and their director is Douglas Murray. So we're able to get both people to have a chat about this issue. Mohammed Shafiq, good evening.
Hello, Peter.
You heard it. Were you upset?
I was actually, and I think it's deeply offensive to try to link in a pretty vile, vicious and disgusting criminal who carried out that vicious attack on that defenceless woman, to try to suggest that sort of behaviour is endemic to the Muslim community, or particularly communities from different parts of the world, is deeply offensive and unacceptable. And I think it's baseless, without any evidence. And David Davies once again seems to jump on this bandwagon of demonising and attacking Muslims, and I think that's deeply irresponsible for a Member of Parliament.
Yeah, the weakness of his argument was clearly that he had no idea at all about the circumstances of this particular attack. But and
that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think if he were here, he would find that difficult to justify, and he was a bit diffident at one stage. But on the other hand, on the general suggestion that there are certain ingrained attitudes among some parts of the community which make abuse of women more likely, do you accept that that is a problem or not?
I accept that there are cases in all communities where women are subjected to domestic violence, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of their faith or their culture. I think there are certain practices in all communities that we've got to tackle and address. But to single out a particular community and call it medieval, the way David was doing, was unacceptable. There is a real present problem in this country, for example, with domestic violence. It's on the increase. There are more and more women are subjected to vicious and attacks by their partners and their husbands, and we've got to address that. But for example,
it tends to be done by people of all colours, doesn't it? Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Peter, if you just take the Edlington case, because these two young boys who carried out that vicious attack in Doncaster were from Doncaster, you don't necessarily say that all people from Doncaster are responsible for their actions, and it's truly a stupidity to suggest that Muslims are responsible for the action of this vicious rapist that's thankfully been put away.
Thanks for that, mate.
Sentence should be looked at again, because it's far less than that you should get.
Okay, well, stay on the line for a second. Let's have a quick chat to Douglas Murray. You were quoted, Douglas, so it's probably worthwhile getting you to tell us what it is that you've suggested at the Centre for Social Cohesion.
I think what Mr. Davies was referring to was a report of the Centre's published, I think, 3 years ago now, called Crimes of the Community, which is an investigation into honour-based violence in the UK across all ethnic minority communities. It's a report which has been taken up widely, not just by the press, but also by the police and counselling services in trying to deal with what is a very serious and very disturbing issue.
Then none of that, of course, related to any particular case, and that as we've been saying, is kind of the weakness of all this. It's kind of based on a case, and we don't really know what the background of the case was. So,
well, I think that's true. That as far as I understand it, Mr. Davies' comments was a sort of slightly different angle from what he originally went in to say. But I think that it is worth clarifying that this is an issue, and it's one which, however uncomfortable it is for people, should be addressed, and members of Parliament and others should be in a position to address.
Right, you're saying it's a particular attitude in some communities. Now, we hear about things like honour killings, and that clearly is a problem, but we also hear of a great deal of strange and unpleasant violence perpetrated by people of no particular ethnicity on each other. And Douglas, why single out one particular branch of the community and say, oh, look at them, because we should be looking at all of us, shouldn't we?
For the following reason, which is that I don't think that until we know the details of this case, which haven't come out yet, that we can do any meaningful analysis of it.
Yeah.
But in the case of Edlington, which we also don't know the full story about now either, it would be significant if we were to find out that the young boys who committed the atrocious acts in Edlington had come from a community which even in part condoned such behavior. Now, this is simply something we can't get away from. If that were the case in Edlington, we would want to know about it. If it is the case in this instance, we would also want to know about it. There are incredible sensitivities in this area which have to be borne in mind, but we can't get away from the facts. The facts remain that in immigrant populations in Britain, Mr. Davies is right, that attitudes towards women are, by and large, far more backward than those generally here.
That is the general accusation then, Mohammed Shafiq, and I'll give you the last word on this.
Well, I mean, Douglas and his Centre for Social Cohesion has got a habit of picking ethnic minorities and targeting. It would be nice to hear. It would be nice to see him targeting. It would be nice to see him targeting some of the other.
Well, if I can say, Mr. Shafiq, do you mean like the British National Party, which we're publishing our second report on in 6 months?
I mean,
do you mean that?
This constant obsession of focusing on our community.
Why don't you talk about the obsession we have with making sure the fascists are the British National Party?
Can I intervene? I want to intervene a minute, Douglas, so I don't really want you to go sort of just slam into each other. The question I wanted to put to Mohammed Shafiq really was the kind of slightly more rational one. I mean, the allegation, the suggestion from Douglas Murray is that there are certain inherited attitudes in some parts of the community which makes it more likely that violence against women will occur because that's the way they think. And he says that's a matter which should be looked at. Now, do you agree or not that there is a problem at all, Mohammed?
I agree that there are issues, singular examples of individuals who may use violence against women and kill daughters or sisters, and I think that's inherently wrong, and I oppose that, and we campaign at Ramadan Foundation against that. But I think what isn't acceptable is to suggest that a community faith system or a community culture is responsible for these actions.
Okay.
In the same way that Doncaster, that these boys and their upbringing was responsible.
I'm going to cut you both off there because we could go on about this for some time. But thank you very much indeed for your contributions. I mean, clearly, if we found in Doncaster that there was some inherited kind of idea in the community which led those children towards that kind of action, it would be relevant. I think that's the point that Douglas Murray was trying to take. Mohammed Shafiq says don't single us out, and indeed there have been a lot of calls saying that what Mr. Davies did was, how shall we say, unfortunate. Anyway, we might return to this issue at another day. It's 6:25.